Oh shit. Is that cop following me? Another early morning. Here's my new GoPro. Haven't started using it yet though. Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about speeding tickets and how to avoid them. Now, this is kind of a slow time of year to talk about cars because it's still winter. So, when you own a fast sports car, and in my case I own multiple fast high horsepower cars, how do you avoid getting tickets? Well, if your answer is don't speed, well, this video really isn't for you. Because when you own a high horsepower sports car, you're inevitably going to speed even if you're not aware of it. So how do we deal with that situation? Well, I'm going to tell you a couple of tips that I followed. Oh shit. Is that cop following me? Oh no. That would be ironic if I got a ticket during this video. Alright, never mind. I thought this cop was following me for a minute there. So here are my tips to help avoid getting tickets. Number one, now some of these tips are going to be obvious, and so pardon me, but I'm going to tell you right now that whatever seems obvious, you'll be surprised how many people do not follow this advice and don't do this kind of stuff every single day. And that's why people are out there getting pulled over and getting tickets all of the time. All right, so number one, pretty obvious, get a radar detector as well as an appropriate app so that you can keep track of who's monitoring traffic. Now again, some of this is obvious, some of this is decades old. Now what radar detector you want to get, that's for another video, and you're going to find a lot of advice about that on the internet. I happen to use a Uniden, and I think it's worked well for me. It beeps a lot, but I only pay attention to the KA bands. You're going to want to listen to KA bands because that's the type of band that's typically used by officers where I live. And another one would be the Waze app. Waze is a good app. I never really was successful in getting it downloaded onto my phone for some reason. So I typically use Google Maps, and Google Maps will sometimes give you an idea if there's somebody monitoring traffic up ahead. Number two, recognize police vehicles and use your eyes. Now, I can't emphasize this enough. Again, it seems like common sense, but I think a lot of people, and maybe they just don't have common sense, but that is your best sort of hedge or protection from getting a speeding ticket. So what do I mean by that? Well, look around. When you feel like you're about to do a pull on that long stretch of empty road that's so tempting, just use your eyes for a second and look around. Look in front of you. Look in the sides. Look in the rear view mirror. Do you see any cars that could potentially be unmarked police cars or marked police cars? And that's the other part of this, is that you need to recognize what police cars look like. And typical models are going to be your Ford Explorers, your Dodge Chargers, Chevy Tahoes, Ford Tauruses, Chevy Caprice, and other types of vehicles. Now, do you see a pattern there? Depending on your jurisdiction, at least in my jurisdiction, the pattern tends to be Fords, Chevys, and Dodge. Those are the three companies that tend to make police cars. And when I'm out and about, if I see a Ford Explorer or a Dodge Charger off in the distance and I don't know what it is, I'm not doing that pull. Better safe than sorry. It may turn out that it's just some grandma driving her kids around, but I don't care. It's not worth the risk. So recognize your police vehicles. Now, if you see a Lexus or a Mercedes-Benz or a Toyota, those aren't police cars, so you're fine. But you need to know your police car brands. Next piece of advice, drive in familiar territory. So if I'm driving down in Georgia on a long road trip, I'm generally going to try not to speed because I don't know where the speed traps are. I don't know where the police tend to hang out. I'm very unfamiliar and I'm most vulnerable. Lots of times when I've gotten tickets or gotten pulled over, it's when I've been out of state. So if you're going to do some fast pulls, you need to do it in, your local roads, places where you're familiar, where you drive every day, places where you tend to see police cars. I know where a lot of the speed traps are. And the other thing, and this is an important golden rule, I always avoid schools and churches. That's right, schools and churches. Even when school is not in session, cops love to just hang out on school parking lots. Whether they're taking a break, whether they're talking to other police, or they're just monitoring traffic or whatever, having lunch, you see them in school parking lots all the time and in church parking lots. So if I'm coming up on a school or a church, I'm slowing down. Number 4, and this is an important one. I think this has served me well for highway driving. Always use your cruise control. I cannot emphasize that enough. I see a lot, again, this seems like common sense, but I've seen plenty of videos online and heard of people going 90 on the highway and you see it on various YouTube videos with, supercars and this and that, people getting pulled over, getting ticketed. And, I'm going to tell you, why were you going 90 on the highway? All right, I've done 90 on the highway before, but, again, those are special circumstances, but these are people who are out of state, traveling long distances and just going outrageous speeds. I mean, you're going to get caught. You're going to get pulled over inevitably. I'm setting up cruise control. Very simple. I use the speed limit, so let's say it's 65, and I add about 9 miles an hour to it, and that's where I set the cruise control. So if the speed limit's 65, I set it around 73, 74. Yeah, cars are going to pass me. I might be tempted by that. And that gets to another thing. You could just follow the traffic, and that's a pretty safe strategy. But if that's not really the case, or it's mostly an empty road, I just go a tad bit above the speed limit and I just set the cruise control. When you do that, when you're not paying attention, you're generally safe because a cop's not going to pull you over if you're just going 6, 7, 8 miles an hour over the limit. My final piece of advice. And this may seem like common sense, but I've seen enough on TV and videos online to know that a lot of people don't adhere to this. Maybe they have a fire in their belly, or they're just pissed off, or they're rebellious, or whatever, but you've got to chill out. When a police officer pulls you over for whatever reason, always be docile and always be very respectful. Whether you are tempted to get pissed off or not, do not do it. You are dealing with a human being. And I've seen a lot of videos where people are getting pulled over and they're questioning the officer. What kind of device did you use to track my speed? How do you know I was speeding? Why did you pull me over? You're dealing with a person, all right? It's a person who's doing their job. You're probably a little bit pissed off and scared that you got pulled over. You've got to keep it together. From the very get-go, I'm extremely cooperative. I'm very calm. I'm very polite. I give the officer whatever they need, and I'm very apologetic. Now, you don't necessarily have to admit anything on camera. I wouldn't do that, but just be very apologetic. And if the cop is pissed off, do not provoke him more. It is not worth it. Just sit there and say, I'm very sorry. Just keep on saying, I'm very sorry. And that's all you need to do. I have had a couple of police officers let me off with a warning just with having that kind of attitude. So those are my pieces of advice to avoid getting speeding tickets. Now, a few updates. I'm still, believe it or not, even though I keep saying I'm going to keep my M850i, I always like to see what's out there. I'm actually still negotiating to potentially get an M5 competition. That's right, a competition. You guys have not seen this model yet. That may go nowhere. Future videos might also include a visit to a Ferrari showroom, as well as a possible test drive of an X3M competition. So we will see, and I'd like to thank everybody for watching.